Hi, I'm Ann Thomas. I'm founder of Transgender Talent, and this is a video about your personal finances as a artist in the business of acting. This is about how to handle the ups and downs of finances that people in the entertainment industry face constantly. There's two business concepts that we're going to talk about first before we start this. The first one is wealth versus income. Wealth is basically when you have money, and it's how you got it. Sometimes you get it from earning it. Sometimes you inherit it. Sometimes you have something that comes your way, in the way of a lottery win or something like that. Income is what you do with that wealth or to create wealth, and it's what comes in on either an infrequent or a regular basis. And so you have to have income basically to protect your wealth. Wealth in history was more like landowners, farmers that would own their properties and things like that, and they would be passed down from family to generations within families. And back in the early days before the Industrial Revolution, it was pretty much your income to support that came maybe once a year, and it would be from farming, where you would harvest crops, or from mining or other exploitation of your property that you owned. It wasn't a steady monthly thing or weekly as we see today. That shifted with the Industrial Revolution or thereabouts. The historians know more about this than I do, but income became the way that you were able to smooth out that cash flow, so that you had, so back then they'd have something that happened more often than once a year. There's two different business models that a lot of people don't realize there's a difference, because most people are nowadays accustomed more to the credit business model than the cash business model. When I was first learning business back in the 70s and 80s from an old man who took me under his wing to train me, he taught me about this, that prior to the credit revolution, which was really when they started granting credit to individuals, which started after World War II. And it slowly faded into popularity. It wasn't something that just happened overnight. Because after World War II, there was private parties didn't get credit lines like we do today. Individuals didn't. Credit cards weren't invented until the 50s, and they didn't become popular until the 60s and 70s, really. It started out with Diners Club way back in the 50s, and you can read histories about this, but there's a huge difference in how those business models work. A cash business model means you only do what you have with the cash you have on hand. Credit means that you borrow money and use that to make your business or your personal life grow. The difference with that is, back when I was learning about business back then, credit business model was known as leveraging, and it makes your business grow far faster than a cash model. And that's why it became so popular so quickly, because with a cash model, you would take your money and invest it and get a return on investment, maybe anywhere from 6 to 12%, maybe higher if you were lucky, per year, and it grew slowly. With a credit model, you would use the credit to buy whatever you needed to grow your business. That would be equipment or hire employees or whatever, banking on the fact that you were going to get a certain amount of growth that year to pay for the credit, to pay it back, to make the payments on the interest and the principal on that credit, and grow your business that much quicker. And that's why they call it a leverage model. And it grew to where people could experience massive growth in their companies at a very rapid pace, pushing way past the 20% mark into the 40% mark is not uncommon. And so that's why it became so amazingly popular back then. And it took over business schools, basically. And that's why it's so prevalent today. So which business model is best for those in entertainment? For those with steady work, that would be somebody who works in majors, usually where they're on shows that last for shooting for like 6 months at a time. And that's either in front of or behind the lens. It could be an actor who has a series regular role, or a camera operator or producer, or a person in craft services who goes in 5-6 days a week shooting their project, and that job can last for 6 months or more at a time on a major series or something like that. That's when you have that kind of steady income, then the credit model works really, really, really well. For those with random work, which is far more common in the industry, that would be for like actors who do occasional roles, who don't have series regulars, or they have a short series regular, like it's just 6 episodes or 10 episodes, which are becoming much more common nowadays, than the 22 plus episodes that you'd see in a major series on a major network of the past. Those with random income actually need to lean more towards the cash end of the spectrum of the business model, or maybe mix it with partially with credit, which is where things seem to be settling nowadays because of the popularity of the credit business model. So, which model is right for you? We're going to look mostly at the cash business model because there's so much you can find online about managing credit, handling credit, and operating your business and your personal life from a credit point of view. There's just tons out there on it, but there's very, very little on cash business operations. So that's why I want to cover that in this video. What do you do when you get a huge windfall? And the huge windfall could come from a big role you landed in a feature film, or a guest star role on a TV series, or maybe you've won the lottery, even if it was a small one, 10, 20, 30, $50,000. That's pretty good. Or maybe you've inherited a bunch of money, or something else has happened where you've got a bunch of cash at home. Maybe, I know, you had a lawsuit about gender discrimination and you won a bunch of money from a court case. That can happen too. So, what do you do when you get a windfall? Well, it's like, according to statistics, 70% of the people who get a huge windfall declare bankruptcy within 3 to 5 years after that windfall comes to them. There's something really wrong with that picture, and it has to do with the cash versus credit business model and how they aren't teaching cash business model anymore. So, the first thing you want to do is set up multiple banks or credit union accounts. And I know this sounds really, really wacko. Well, maybe it doesn't. Think about it. The stability of the banking and credit union industries seems, to most people to be pretty solid, but there's been waves of time where it seemed like back in 2008, 2009, 2010, there's a bunch of banks going out of business and stuff like that. And it was all guaranteed, and there was credit unions going under too, and it was all guaranteed by the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, or the organization that underwrites the credit unions, which is similar. These organizations are federally funded and federally set up. Now, I don't know if they're federally funded, but they're federally regulated, as what I should say. And the thing is, though, that banks and credit unions have come and gone over the years. And it's scary when one of them goes under because it takes all those depositors with them. And going back in history, we go back 100 years ago to well, 90 years ago to the 29 crash. There was a lot of banks that went bankrupt. And as soon as the crash happened, there was massive lineups of people wanting to make withdrawals. And there was riots, people trying to get into the banks to get their money out. The banks don't have the money that you deposit sitting in cash in the boxes in the back of the bank inside their vault. It's not the way it works. So it's kind of silly to expect that you can just automatically pull your money out as soon as you put it in a bank, because a bank or credit union takes the money and invests it either locally or nationally or internationally, depending on the rules they're under, to invest that money and make the interest by which then they pay you for the money that you've deposited in a savings or an interest-bearing account of some kind, whether it's a certificate deposit or interest-bearing checking accounts, things like that. So the problem is, you want, if you have all your eggs in one basket, as they say, and that basket falls to the ground, you're going to lose. So that's why, especially when you have large amounts of money that come in, scatter it, move it out. Put it in banks that are all over the country, too. Don't just focus on, put some in a major bank that's got branches just everywhere around the world. That could be, one of the ones you see on every street corner. And I'm not going to name all the branches like that because this video could be seen 20 years from now and one of those banks could have merged with somebody else. And they don't exist anymore. So, same with credit unions. There's national credit unions and local ones. You might want to invest and put money in a huge international bank chain so you have access to that money anywhere you happen to be in the world. That you could think you might be shooting a movie in, which that's why the international banks are so valuable. Then for credit unions tend to be more supportive of the local region they're in. So you could get a credit union account started where you live or in the industry you're at, because there's some credit unions that have branches literally inside the studio lots in Hollywood. So get in with those, so that way you can go in and withdraw money or make other kinds of transactions when you're shooting a show and you don't have to leave the lot and the security of the lot. Take a look at that. Have some money over there. Have some money in other credit unions. Maybe you have family that worked at a company in some state that you moved here to Hollywood. I'm assuming you live in Hollywood. You might not. But maybe you've got a credit union that's local to your region that you have to be a resident of that region to get an account there. Or maybe you have a relative who works at a company that qualifies you to join a credit union that's to do with some manufacturing or similar credit union somewhere in the United States. So the other thing is that the more zeros you have in your bank account showing when the teller brings it up, the weirder the tellers get, to be honest with you. It's better to not have, huge amounts of money sitting there in one spot. And I know that makes you go, wait a minute, you don't want to keep all that money in a bank account anyway. Well, true. And we're going to talk about that later. But at least at the very beginning, you're going to get a massive check, possibly. And you have to have somewhere to put it. So that's the first thing you do is put it in multiple banks or credit unions to spread that out, and then from there move them to investments that we'll talk about next. First of all, create emergency cash reserves. Now, you need to have cash reserves in the event something happens. You can't have everything what's called non-liquid. Non-liquid is things like certificates of deposit, which have a time limit as to when you can withdraw them without being penalized. That would be in stocks, bonds, real estate, anything like that is non-liquid, they call it. And so you need to have your money reachable on a moment's notice. So always have some set aside. They recommend 6 months of cash reserves for most people. So that would cover your bills that you would incur during 6 months. And that's the minimum, preferably more. So if you're going through, a couple $1,000s a month in rent, you're going to want at least $12,000 just to cover the rent alone. But you also need funds to cover all your other bills, which we'll talk about later. But have emergency cash reserves available so that you can then access it when you need it, should there be an emergency that comes up in your life. If you don't have credit cards yet, one of the first things you want to do is get going with credit cards. And most of them, when you don't have any credit cards and you don't have a decent credit score, then you need to start by getting a secured credit card, which is where you give them cash to begin with, and that gets put into a special savings account attached to that credit card, and it guarantees that that credit card will be paid off, and the dollar amount you put in that savings account is your credit limit for the use of that card. Then you begin using that card properly on a monthly basis, buying things and paying off the card each month, and that builds your credit score and builds your credibility with that bank chain or that credit card company, so that you can then move off of having a secured credit card. Once you pass the time limit that they give you for that secured credit card, typically 6 months or a year, they return the money to you that you put in to secure it in the savings account. So they don't just eat it, they give it back to you. It's just simply a guarantee that the card will be paid off. The next thing you do once you get a big windfall is pay off your credit cards, personal loans, and car loans. If you've got that much money coming in, like if you've just won $1 million, or you get paid $1 million, or you inherit $1 million, pay off credit cards that you have. Bring every balance to zero. Get your personal loans paid off and your car loans paid off. Start by paying off the highest interest loans first, unless you're doing it all in one day, which is kind of hard to do, or all in 1 month. But start with your credit cards, because the credit card interest that is being charged nowadays is exorbitant. Personal loans and car loans tend to be a hell of a lot lower in their loan amounts and can contain certain penalties if you pay off early. So make sure you check that and see what's reasonable. It might not be reasonable to pay off a personal loan way ahead of time if it's got an interest rate that's extremely low, plus it has a penalty. There's no point, just pay the loan off on time. Another thing you want to do is buy in bulk. Yeah, I'm talking hoarding, in a way, but not really hoarding. You don't need to buy just one roll of toilet paper at a time, even when we're not in a national crisis like a pandemic, where a lot of people were buying in bulk and it was stripping the stores out. People who are living in the country know to buy in bulk anyway, especially in the fall before the bad weather hits, because it's not uncommon for them to lose accessibility to stores because of bad weather, especially snow and ice storms. It makes it dangerous to travel, so they'll tend to buy stuff and stack it up. And it's not that much ahead. It's enough so that you can get by for at least the amount of time that you could be locked up, because of bad weather, at least a week, maybe 2 or longer. Or maybe you're in an area that's prone to some kind of really severe issue going on. You want to store that stuff in a way that it isn't going to get destroyed, and store water and food and canned food, stuff that doesn't need to be refrigerated or frozen in case you need electricity. Which kind of jumps me over to another side subject here. If you do need to have electricity and you're out and you're in an area where that does lose that, or it's prone to it, or it could easily lose it, get yourself a generator. It's so much easier when you have that. So I did that for a while. And here's the next thing that's kind of interesting and a lot of people don't look at, which is pay bills annually or for long periods of time, or even longer periods than annual. Those are things like insurance. How often do we get signed up for insurance and make monthly payments? Whether it's your homeowners, your renters, or your car insurance, they all give you those options. but they also add to the fees they charge you when you do it that way. They would prefer that you pay annually or at least 6 months at a time based on the policy and the insurance company giving you that policy. Look into it. Pay it in advance. Pay the whole thing. Let it go as far out as you can push it. If you can do a 2 year or a 1 year, do it, because that will reduce your monthly outflow of cash. Maybe you have a PO box. They offer 6 month or a year or longer coverage and payment for the rental. Pay it in as much as you can do. Your IMDb account. A lot of people can't afford them, and now that you've got an influx of cash, you can afford it. Buy in a 1 year increments on IMDb if that's something that helps your career. For those of you who aren't in the industry, don't worry about this part. Anyway, IMDb does monthly payments, but if you do a 1 year or a 6 month, I believe it is, I think it's the 1 year, you get a significant discount, as you do if you're in certain trade unions that are best helped by IMDb, such as the Screen Actors Guild. So in fact, you can look into that on IMDb and find out who gets and qualifies for the discount. So you can get a serious discount if you pay a whole year in advance and you're a member of a union. Now, let's say you have a company and you have office locations. Now, the reason you might have these is you might have an occasional need for an office meeting, and it may not be a place where you physically have an office you go to each day to sit down at, but the office location offers you a conference room option, maybe video or audio conferencing in that room to other locations, which is really cool. I've used those before and they're really neat. But they also provide you with a mailing address so that if you're becoming more and more famous and you don't want people to know where you live, you can have an office location that you pay for in these office complexes that gives you an address and a post office box basically you can pick up from. That's not part of the U.S. Postal Service. It's separate. The monthly fees are higher, but they give you a lot more options. They have full office setups there sometimes, and most of them have this, where they have fax machines and photocopiers and productivity rooms where you can do different kinds of projects, big huge tables, stuff you don't want sitting around inside your apartment or your house. Makes for a nice place to work. So you can pay for those in advance too. So take a look at those. Here's the next one: union dues or joining fees. Check with your union if you're already in one, and if you're not in one and are now qualified to join one, do so with that money that just came in. See if you can set it up to pay your union dues in a larger batch that saves you money. I'm not sure that is an option, but check with your union and see. Website related services would be like if you own the domain name for your personal name or for your company name. You want to pay for that as much as you can. Usually you pay for domain names in blocks of a year at a time, and you can buy them and purchase them ahead years in advance, so you lock it up for a really long time. Buy those in the largest increments that you can through the service provider that you have. And for those of you who are actors and or others who want to establish their careers around their name, make sure that you have purchased a domain name, a .com with your name in it, johndoe.com or whatever your name is. Make sure you have that, and buy other domains that are worthwhile to you. Like if you're an actor, get johndoe.actor, or if you're if you're an agent, do johndoe.agent, whatever you are. Just make sure you get those and pay for them in as large of an increment as you can afford in the budget that you have. Pay for video conferencing software. Everybody's been using Zoom lately. There's a lot of other conferencing brands out there. Take a look at the options and how much it costs. Buy them all ahead of time in 1 year or larger increments, whatever they can, and it will save you money. Productivity software. This could be stuff like, oh God, Adobe has their massive suite that everybody knows about. See if you can buy that in 1 year increments, or if you're doing any other kind of software, like another one that's popular for creatives is called Basecamp, where you actually discuss and plan projects in that, and that's something that you can buy in large increments, like a year at a time, and it saves money to do so. For some things that you can't pay a year in advance. What you can do is set up a special bank account that you put all that money into a year or more at a crack, and make it a checking account so you don't get fees for withdrawing too often from it, with a debit card, and use those for automatic payments from accounts that have to come out monthly. That would be like your utilities for your house or whatever. They can be set up so that you can have the monthly fees that are charged come out of those without you even looking. So it's an automatic pay feature, and a lot of those, almost all utilities offer that nowadays. And have it pointing at that special bank account, so that way you don't have to worry about putting funding in it. Just take a look once a month to make sure that the bills are being paid, that nothing's bouncing, and that you have plenty of money in there to cover more than a month's worth of bills coming through, even at the peak amount they could be, because bills can change, like your electric or your gas bill. Buy a vehicle for cash. Don't put it on credit. Because, see, if you're working as an actor and you're getting like 1 or 2 feature films a year, or 3 feature films, and you don't have any other work you're doing that brings you monthly income, why have payments? Because the payments are there because you have reason for them coming in regularly. And so buy a vehicle for cash, so that way you don't have a monthly payment that you have to deal with. Buy real estate. This is why the cost of real estate in Los Angeles is outrageous, and has been for years, decades, is because people get these big windfalls of money, and the most secure thing to put money into is real estate. So these people with massive amounts of cash and wads of it, they go out and they buy real estate, and they buy it in an area where they can go look at it or live in it. And so you'll find that people will buy clusters of houses throughout the region of Los Angeles, way out into the distance now. And so, far from the main studios and stuff like that. But that's the most stable place you can put money, is in real estate. You might want to seek financial management for the handling the money that you have, because some of it you might be advised to put into stocks or bonds or some other investment, and you need a company that's their specialty, is managing a portfolio of cash that you might have. One of them that you can start out with, if you have horrible credit and you just got this handful of cash, a lot of it, you don't know what to do with it, and you've got a crappy credit score, and you want to make your picture look better, is a place called Operation Hope. They were created after the Watts riots, the very famous Watts riots that happened decades ago. They determined that the reason the riots happened, one of the main points of them, was that people had no hope in that area in Watts, and the amount of people owning homes was ridiculously low as opposed to renters. And statistically, when you have a high percentage of people as renters in an area, you get an amazing amount of unrest that happens, because they have no hope for the future. They have no reason to hope, because they have nothing permanent to pass on to their heirs. And so Operation Hope was created to help people, particularly of color, in Watts, to help them build up their credit score to be able to buy a home. Because, see, going back a step here, when I said buy real estate, you might not be getting enough cash to buy for cash an entire property. You may be able to finance a portion of it out of your pocket, but then you're going to need to take a loan out for the rest. But if your credit score is horrible, you can't do that. You're sitting there with like $500,000 and you can't invest it in real estate because the minimum price in your area is $800,000 for a house or something like that, which is not unusual nowadays in this area. In fact, $800,000 is a steal in most areas around Los Angeles. Operation Hope can help you take your credit score and use that cash that you do have to bring your credit score up to where a bank will loan you money more willingly on home ownership for your first house. Other credit counseling organizations do as well, but I personally prefer Operation Hope. I've worked with them. They're really, really wonderful people, and they get it much better than most places do for this particular region. Let's say you are wanting to worry about retirement funds. Well, contribute to them. Set up like whatever retirement fund works best for you. And that's why you go to financial managers, because they can help you figure that out. Let's say you're getting to the point where you've got all this stuff already. Your check is so big from a movie that you can buy real estate, have multiple vehicles, have all your cash reserves set up, and you know that you've got kids either already or you're planning on having them, or they're on the way. Set up trusts for them ahead of time. You can contribute to those trusts, and then you can make it so that it transfers to them upon your death. And so that's a way that the wealthy will be able to set it up to avoid inheritance taxes, is they set up a trust and transfer the funds to them those funds ahead of time. And they're usually put into a trust that's handled by a financial management company. So this is why you need to look at financial management from companies that actually that's their specialty. Next thing you need to invest in is career improvement. Start by creating a website for fans to learn more about you in a controlled way. You don't want TMZ or any other of these news organizations that basically are gossip oriented to be feeding information to your fans. Websites are a lot more static than social media, but they give an overview that is amazing, and you might want to look at that for providing the basis for your social media to operate from. And it also gives professionals who might hire you a place to go and look at your career more. So start with that. They're not cheap. Get a paid account on IMDb, like I mentioned earlier, and other places that depends on what your career is, because there are different websites designed to promote people in different careers. Look at getting a publicist or a PR firm and pay for them in advance. Publicists and PR firms do not operate on a percentage of your income, which is the way agents and managers operate. Publicists and PR firms typically charge a monthly fee. You might be able to negotiate a lower rate if you pay in advance. A good publicist or PR firm is expensive, but that's what keeps the public eye on these folks. When I watch media now, I can see when an actor has a publicist that's good or a PR firm backing them, because I can see them popping up all the time. Same with projects, whether it's a film or a TV series or whatever. If they've got a really good publicity firm handling it, it's amazing. I've seen both sides of the spectrum on that. I've seen projects get just insane amounts of publicity for their release, and other things come out with no support for their actors at all. And so it's like, wow, not even assets for their social media is sent to them. It's mind-blowing to me, and I can see why some of these shows aren't really that popular when they don't get the PR that they could to make them grow fast. But then again, maybe they've already got all the audience the network thinks they're going to possibly get anyway. Who knows? One thing you can do is get your social media accounts verified. The quickest way to do that is to hire a publicist to get those verification check marks. A lot of people don't realize that. I've seen so many celebrity trans people whining about this, and it's like, well, I filed this and I filed that. I never hear him back. I never get my check mark. Well, hire a publicist to do it. It's just that simple. They usually charge a flat fee, and they will get you your accounts verified almost immediately. And the reason why it's so easy for them, I think, this is just hypothetical. I think this is it. It's just my conjecture. Is that I think the social media companies figure you are legit if you're hiring a publicist that they know about to get the verification, and so they know they're not being scammed by some troll in some other part of the world. So that's why they're more readily able to do that, and getting an account verified through a publicist is really fast, but it's not cheap. But that's something you can do on a flat fee basis, and it's actually fairly affordable when you're getting a huge chunk of money that's come in. The publicist can also get you then coverage in trade magazines and coordinate with project publicity. So let's say you're in a movie. The publicist can then partner with the publicity division of the studio to help include you as an actor in the publicity push. And it can be very, very overwhelming. If you get a lead in a feature film that's major from a major studio, it can result in literally hundreds of articles and interview requests coming in, and it's impossible for the actor themselves to keep up with that flood, or the management. It needs to be a full-time position for a publicist to handle that much publicity flow. It's even for one person, it's overwhelming. Sometimes you need a whole firm working on it with multiple people assigned to it, 1, 2, 3 people full-time on handling the publicity for one star that's going into one major project. It can be that big. Another thing you can do is create or partner with a designer to create merch for your fans. Now, by create, I mean if you're a good artist yourself and you want to design some stuff, great. Most people don't want to focus on that if their main focus is on acting, and they're too busy doing acting stuff, and they're getting interviews and media and all that stuff. It gets to be overwhelming. You can partner with a designer to create the merch and get it out there, and it ties back into the website that I mentioned in this section at the beginning. And that's actually, depending on where you are in your career, where you can make the most money. Take a look at the Kardashians. They have reality shows going for years, but the vast majority of their income does not come from those shows. It comes from the merchandise lines that they have created with designers of various product lines to create something with their name on it. The only drawback is with this, if you put your name on a product line, it gets really huge. Then you sell it to somebody, you may not have the rights to use your name after that. Yeah, it gets kind of sticky. So be really, really careful of legal stuff that you sign regarding anything like a perfume or a clothing line that has your name on it. Because if that becomes the property of somebody else in the future, guess what? You're kind of in a pickle with your name. Let's see. Buy things to improve your professional appearance. And by this, I mean, it's like machinery. That would be like cameras and recording equipment for your home. Maybe you need to have a broadcast quality recording studio in your house. Maybe you need to have an editing suite set up because you're a really good editor. I've actually been in houses with these in them, and they're like really amazing. And you walk into what used to be the master bedroom and it's been turned into an editing theater. Holy cow. It's unbelievable the stuff I have seen in people's places and some of these rich houses. They set them up around their career. They aren't just like, oh, let's have fun today, so we're going to have a bowling alley, a swimming pool, and a theater. No, they will actually take part of their space and make it their creative space. And so they need to invest in the equipment that goes in it. So maybe you're an artist, you need to have a room with a big table and all the drawing implements that you need. Maybe you do it digitally, so maybe you should get yourself in a massively huge true color monitor with a computer with the capability to run it and all the software you need to make it work. Then you also need to look at things like clothing, makeup, hair stuff, hair extensions or wigs, things like that are stuff that you want to look at, but measure those things very carefully as you go along and don't just throw a lot of money at stuff. Be careful with it. There we go, covering all that gear. And then productivity software. Yes, make sure you have the productivity software that fits your career. So get editing software if you're an editor. Get recording studio software if that's what you want to do. Get art software if you're an artist. That kind of thing. And the last part is invest in yourself as a person. Invest in you. So go for body improvements if that's something you've been holding back on. That'd be surgeries, hair removal, hair implantations, implants that make sense to where your career is and what you look like, and specifically for those transgender watching this who want to do to look more themselves properly. Look at all those surgeries, because a lot of those are not covered by insurance. If you don't know how to drive yet, go take driving lessons and get a license. Even if you don't plan on ever driving, because you've got so much money, you can hire town cars to take you around. That's fine. You still could use driving lessons and a license if you're an actor going for roles that may require a driver's license for shooting scenes. Yes, that happens. So it's good to have that, even if that's not your best thing. Acting lessons. You want to improve your acting? Well, keep taking lessons. Some actors I have talked to in Hollywood who have been in the business for decades, even when they're A-list, will keep taking acting lessons. It's not something that that stays with you. It's like riding a bicycle and that you don't forget how to do it, but it's best if you practice it. So acting lessons and workshops helps you do that. Singing lessons. Let's say you want to be a big time singer too. Well, do that. Keep taking those lessons. That's the same there. You need to practice constantly, and a vocal coach will help you do that. Let's say you want to do writing as you get older. That's one of the things with careers in Hollywood, is that it's best if you go in other directions that are more behind the lens as you age in Hollywood. There isn't that many actors who start out young who are still on camera as they get old. It just doesn't happen that much. A lot of them branch out into other things, including writing, directing, producing, all that stuff behind the lens. So consider taking classes in any of those areas. Take business classes so you understand how to handle your money, how to set up a business, because if you're going to go doing writing and producing and directing or something like that, maybe you want to start a production company. You need to have a business background to understand how to do that right. You really should always partner with somebody or a group of people who have skills that don't overlap with yours, and one of them can be business skills. So what you want to look for is understanding when it's the wrong person, and the business classes can show you that. Same with the writing, the singing, and the acting classes. If you've taken lessons in all of those areas, even though you're not great at it, you can recognize when somebody is good because you know what the standards are once you take those classes. So these are a really good way to improve yourself. Take master classes. You're good already as an actor? Take the master classes then. Get in there with some really top shelf actors, or singers, or writers, or directors, or producers, or business people. Master classes are available in just about everything. Finally, learn and practice some new skill that you just want to do because you've always dreamt of doing it. Maybe it's skydiving, scuba diving, riding horses. Those are all dangerous things. What's a little more sedate? Cooking lessons? Yeah, something like that. Do something that's different. That's just for you, just for yourself, to make yourself feel good about yourself. It's a reward for all the good hard work you put in. But most of all, now that we're finished going through all this, is remember that what I've just given you an overview of is all the things on how to handle a huge cash influx. And it's not all of them, there's a lot more to it that you can study. But realize that this is not something that is taught, that people don't realize there's a way you handle large chunks of money when they come in. And the vast majority, 70% of the people out there do not handle it right and lose it and end up bankrupt. And it's mainly because they're using credit rules applied to a cash business, and it doesn't work because credit requires that you have a monthly income because you have to make the monthly payments and you to pay the interest each month. But if you got it all in one big chunk, why would you do that to yourself? You want to reduce the monthly payments as much as you can to where they're almost non-existent. And so when you have a bunch of cash, you set it up so that you don't have that monthly obligation. Honestly, if you get to a perfect world, you'd be only making once a year payments on taxes, and that's it for your property where you live. Everything else you've got paid for in advance. And so that's basically what you're working towards, how to get out from under the monthly payment death spiral that you could get into so easily. Because it's all based on futures when you're in credit. You have to have that. This is why I'm shooting this during the big pandemic of COVID-19. This is why so many companies have gone bankrupt and are gone forever, is because they based their business model around credit, which meant they had to have monthly income. Without that monthly income, they can't keep up on the credit payments, and as a result, they can't keep their businesses operational. And that's created a ripple effect with lots of people getting laid off from their jobs nationwide, where there's been records after records after records of unemployment, and it was totally because of credit business model used instead of a cash business model. So I'm sure there's people and economists out there that are going to disagree with me, and that's okay. I'm just telling you what I was taught back decades ago, long before this credit business model became as popular and widely taught in business school as it is today. So there you go, and I hope you've enjoyed it and you've gotten something out of it. Have a wonderful life, folks.